The massive window in Tom Smith's new room showed a view that still made his heart skip a beat. Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness of space, partially hidden behind the curved edge of the space station. Even after 2 weeks on Beta 7, he couldn't get used to seeing his home planet from above. Tom checked his tablet one more time, making sure he had all his materials ready for his first day at the Interstellar Academy of Sciences. He was the first human student to ever attend the prestigious school, and at 16, he was determined not to mess this up. The exchange program had chosen him from millions of applicants, and he still couldn't believe his luck. The corridors of Beta 7 were built to accommodate all sorts of alien species, with ceilings 3 times higher than what Tom was used to. As he walked to his classroom, he passed creatures that looked like they came straight out of his old science fiction books. A group of floating jellyfish-like beings drifted by, their transparent bodies glowing with soft blue light. A tall, spider-like alien had to bend its 4-jointed legs to drink from a water fountain. Tom's classroom was even more impressive than the corridors. The room was spherical, with seats arranged in spiral patterns that climbed the walls. Some students floated in bubble-like anti-gravity pods, while others perched on branches that grew from the walls. Tom found his assigned seat, thankfully on the ground level, and sat down. A Deathworlder. How fascinating. A musical voice chimed from above. Tom looked up to see a creature that reminded him of a praying mantis, but with iridescent wings and 4 extra arms. The alien floated down on gossamer thin wings and landed delicately next to Tom's desk. I've never met someone from a high-gravity planet before. I'm Kit from the crystal clouds of Jupiter's moons. Before Tom could reply, more students gathered around his desk. There was Alex, who looked like a cross between a deer and a butterfly, with huge eyes that reflected light like diamonds. Pat, a blob-like creature that changed colors with each word it spoke, oozed closer to get a better look at Tom. Is it true that you can survive in gravity 15 times stronger than this? Pat asked, turning a curious shade of purple. Well, Earth's gravity is only about 6 times stronger than the station's, Tom corrected politely. And it's just normal for us. Nothing special. A collective gasp went through the group. Even 6 times their normal gravity seemed impossible to them. Tom was saved from more questions by the arrival of Professor Gray, who glided into the room like a reed swaying in the wind. The professor was easily 12 feet tall, with skin that looked like polished silver and movements so graceful they seemed to defy physics. Welcome, students, to Advanced Planetary Sciences. Professor Gray's voice resonated through the room without seeming to come from any particular spot. This year, we have the honor of hosting our first student from Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld. All eyes turned to Tom again. He tried to sink lower in his seat, but there was no hiding from the curious stares of 20 different species of alien students. For those unfamiliar with planetary classifications, Professor Gray continued, a Class 12 Deathworld is considered nearly uninhabitable by Galactic Council standards. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, and aggressive wildlife make such planets unsuitable for most sentient life. Yet, somehow, humans not only survived but built a civilization there. Tom wanted to explain that Earth wasn't that bad, but looking around at his classmates' delicate forms and light gravity adaptations, he began to understand their perspective. What was normal for him would be deadly for them. The rest of the class was spent reviewing the basics of planetary science, but Tom noticed how his classmates kept stealing glances at him. When Professor Gray mentioned that humans had evolved to have internal calcium-based support structures, skeletons, to deal with Earth's gravity, several students made sounds that Tom's translator rendered as expressions of horror and disbelief. As the class ended, Tom gathered his things, already wondering how he would handle a whole year of being treated like some kind of monster from a horror story. But then Kit floated down beside him again, all 6 hands clutching their books. Tom, Kit said hesitantly, would you tell us more about Earth? It sounds terrifying and amazing at the same time. Looking at the genuine curiosity in Kit's compound eyes, Tom smiled. Maybe being a Deathworlder wouldn't be so bad after all. At least he'd never have trouble finding someone to talk to. A week had passed since Tom's first day at the Interstellar Academy, and he was finally getting used to the strange sights and sounds of alien school life. He'd learned to watch out for floating students, to avoid the anti-gravity corridors, and to always check if a seat was actually a sleeping classmate before sitting down. Professor Gray's class had quickly become his favorite, even though the other students still treated him like he might accidentally break something, or someone, with his Deathworlder strength. Today, the professor drifted to the center of the spherical classroom, their silver skin reflecting the starlight from the massive windows. Today's lesson, Professor Gray announced, their voice rippling through the air, will focus on environmental adaptation. Each of you will prepare a detailed report on how your species handles different planetary conditions. The professor's elongated fingers danced across a holographic display, sending assignment details to each student's tablet. Tom looked at his tablet and frowned. The assignment seemed simple enough. Described how you would survive in different environments. But as he read through the example scenarios, he realized they were all calibrated for the galactic standard. The high-gravity example was only half of Earth's normal gravity. Pat, who had become one of Tom's closest friends, oozed over to his desk. Today, they were a peaceful shade of green. This looks fun. I can't wait to explain how my species changes density to handle different atmospheric pressures. They noticed Tom's expression. What's wrong? These scenarios, Tom said, pointing at his tablet. They're all really easy compared to Earth. Professor Gray must have overheard because they glided over, their tall form casting a shadow over Tom's desk. Ah, yes. For our Deathworlder student, we'll need to modify the assignment. The professor thought for a moment, their skin rippling with silvery patterns. Tom, why don't you describe your normal daily activities on Earth? That should provide an interesting comparison. The class perked up at this suggestion. Kit fluttered down from their higher perch, and Alex turned all four of their ear-like sensors toward Tom. Even the usually disinterested blob clusters at the back of the room shifted closer. Just normal stuff? Tom asked, uncertain. Like going to school and hanging out with friends. Yes, Professor Gray confirmed, but include details about how you handle your planet's conditions, things that would be challenging for non-Deathworlders. As Tom started making notes, he could hear his classmates discussing their own assignments. Kit was explaining how their species used crystalline wings to filter harmful radiation, while Alex described the natural force fields their kind developed for space travel. Professor called out one of the blob clusters. I checked the data on Earth. There must be a mistake. It says they have huge masses of dihydrogen monoxide regularly falling from the sky. That's rain, Tom said without looking up from his tablet. It's just water. We get it all the time. The classroom went silent. Even Professor Gray seemed taken aback. You survive regular acid rain? They asked carefully. What? No, it's not acid rain. It's just normal water. You know, for drinking and growing food and stuff. Tom looked around at the shocked faces. Don't you guys have rain? Most civilized planets, Professor Gray explained gently, have moved beyond the need for naturally occurring precipitation. The idea of surviving regular exposure to falling liquid is, they paused, searching for the right word, unusual. Tom decided not to mention snow or hail just yet. He was starting to realize that his homework might be more interesting than he'd thought. As he worked on his assignment, he could hear his classmates whispering about Earth's extreme conditions. Someone looked up Earth's weather patterns and made a sound that Tom's translator couldn't interpret. Remember, Professor Gray called out as the class ended, your reports are due next week. And Tom, they added, their voice carrying a hint of what might have been concern, please try to stick to believable examples. Tom nodded, already planning how to explain concepts like swimming and mountain climbing to a class that thought rain was deadly. As he packed up his things, he caught sight of Earth through the classroom window. His supposedly deadly, uninhabitable home looked perfectly peaceful from up here, its swirling white clouds hiding all the extreme conditions that had his classmates so worried. He couldn't wait to see their reactions to his homework. Tom sat in his room aboard Beta 7, staring at his tablet as he worked on his homework. He'd spent the last 3 days trying to figure out how to describe normal Earth activities without sounding like he was making things up. After his classmates' reaction to rain, he knew he had to be careful about how he presented things. His first draft had been too simple, his second too technical. Now, on his third attempt, he was trying to find the right balance. He read over what he'd written so far. A typical day on Earth starts with walking to school. This involves moving under our planet's full gravity, which is about 6 times stronger than station gravity. The walk is usually around 2 kilometers, often up and down hills. Sometimes we use bikes, which are 2-wheeled devices we balance on while moving at speeds up to 30 kilometers per hour. Tom paused, remembering how Kit had nearly fainted when he explained what a bicycle was. Maybe he should add some context about safety measures. He kept writing. During physical education class, we play sports. One popular game called basketball involves jumping up to 3 meters high to throw a ball through a raised hoop. Another game, soccer, has us running continuously for 90 minutes while kicking a ball and avoiding other players. A message popped up on his tablet. It was from Pat, who had turned a worried shade of blue-gray. Tom, I'm helping fact-check everyone's homework. Did you mean to write that humans intentionally jump 3 meters high? That's not possible in that gravity, right? Tom smiled and sent back a quick video he'd downloaded from Earth, a recording of a high school basketball game. A few moments later, Pat sent back a string of characters that his translator rendered as. Getting back to his homework, Tom decided to include some everyday activities that didn't involve sports. He added sections about hiking in the mountains, swimming in the ocean, and dealing with different weather conditions. He carefully explained how humans could function normally in temperatures ranging from well below freezing to scorching heat, just as he was describing how humans could eat spicy food. Something he'd learned was considered a mild toxin by most alien species. Another message appeared. This time, it was from Kit. Tom, I'm worried about your homework. Professor Gray asked for real survival strategies, not fantasy stories. I don't want you to get in trouble. Tom felt a mix of frustration and amusement. He thanked Kit for their concern, but assured them he was being honest. To prove it, he added links to Earth documentation for everything he described. As he worked on the final section of his homework, Tom heard a soft chime. It was Alex, using the station's internal communication system. Their diamond-like eyes appeared on his screen, reflecting light and concerned patterns. Tom, we've been friends for 2 weeks now, and I value our friendship, Alex said formally. That's why I must warn you. The other students are saying your homework is a joke. Some think you're making fun of the assignment. But I'm not, Tom protested. Everything I wrote is normal for humans. Look, I even toned it down. I didn't mention extreme sports or deep-sea diving or skydiving. What's skydiving? Alex asked cautiously. It's when we jump out of flying vehicles for fun, Tom started to explain, then stopped as Alex's eyes began flashing in distress patterns. Never mind. I'll stick to basic stuff. Tom spent the rest of the evening carefully editing his homework, trying to make it sound as believable as possible to non-human readers. He removed the section about winter sports, explaining that humans deliberately slid down frozen mountains at high speeds might be too much. He also cut the part about how humans could hold their breath underwater for minutes at a time. Finally, well past station midnight, Tom submitted his homework. He'd done his best to describe Earth activities in the most straightforward way possible. Still, looking at his final draft, he couldn't help but worry. Even with all the extreme stuff removed, it still sounded pretty intense. He just hoped Professor Gray would understand he was being honest. As he got ready for bed, Tom glanced out his window at Earth again. From up here, it looked so peaceful. Who would guess that his classmates saw it as a death trap of crushing gravity, deadly weather, and impossible conditions? He fell asleep wondering how they'd react to his homework tomorrow. The spherical classroom felt smaller than usual as Tom waited for his turn to present his homework. He watched as his classmates showed their survival strategies for different planetary conditions. Most of them involved clever ways to avoid challenging environments altogether. Kit demonstrated how their species could create protective crystalline cocoons when conditions got tough. Pat explained how they could simply change their body density to match their surroundings. Alex showed beautiful holographic images of their natural force fields adapting to different atmospheres. Finally, it was Tom's turn. He walked to the center of the room, trying not to notice how the floating students drifted slightly higher, as if afraid his Earth gravity might somehow reach up and pull them down. "For my presentation," Tom began, his voice steady despite his nerves, "I'll describe how humans handle daily life on Earth." He tapped his tablet, and a holographic image of his hometown appeared in the air. "This is where I live. We walk these streets every day under 6 times the gravity we have here on the station." A ripple of disbelief moved through the classroom. Professor Gray's silver skin flickered with interest patterns, but they said nothing. "Most humans start their day by walking or biking to school," Tom continued, showing a video of morning traffic. "Some of us walk several kilometers each way. The terrain isn't always flat. We often climb hills or stairs." "Excuse me," interrupted one of the blob clusters, "but are you suggesting that humans regularly climb against high gravity for extended periods, without assistance?" "Yes," Tom said simply. "We also run for exercise. Some humans run dozens of kilometers just for fun." The classroom erupted in chittering, buzzing, and various other sounds of disbelief. Professor Gray raised all 4 of their arms for silence. "Tom," the professor said carefully, "perhaps you should move on to how humans handle environmental challenges." Tom nodded and switched to his next slide. "Here's how we deal with weather. When it rains, that's water falling from the sky. We usually just walk through it. We've invented waterproof clothing, but many of us enjoy getting wet." He could see Pat changing colors rapidly, shifting between disbelief purple and concerned green. Kit's wings were vibrating so fast, they were almost invisible. "In winter," Tom continued, "the temperature drops below freezing, and the rain turns to snow. We've adapted to function normally in these conditions. Many humans enjoy outdoor activities in the snow." "You're saying," Alex's musical voice trembled slightly, "that humans intentionally go out when dihydrogen monoxide is literally freezing and falling from the sky?" "Well, yeah," Tom shrugged. "Kids make snow angels. That's where you lie down in the snow and move your arms and legs to make patterns. We also build things with it, have snowball fights, go skiing." "Stop." Professor Gray's voice carried more emotion than Tom had ever heard from them. "Mr. Smith, while we appreciate creativity, this assignment was meant to be factual." "But it is factual," Tom protested. "I haven't even gotten to the part about swimming yet." "Swimming?" several voices asked at once. "It's when we go into large bodies of water for recreation or exercise. We can hold our breath and move around underwater for." Professor Gray's skin had turned almost white. "Mr. Smith, please return to your seat. We will need to discuss this assignment after class." As Tom walked back to his desk, he could hear his classmates whispering. Most of their comments weren't in languages his translator could handle, but he caught phrases like "impossible" and "must be joking" and "poor confused Deathworlder." Kit fluttered down to Tom's desk as soon as he sat down. "Why did you make up such dangerous activities?" they whispered. "Nobody will believe humans intentionally expose themselves to freezing precipitations and large bodies of liquid." "But we do," Tom whispered back. "Look, I can prove it. I have more videos." "Mr. Smith," Professor Gray called out, their voice stern, "please see me after class. We need to discuss the importance of taking assignments seriously." Tom slumped in his seat, wondering how he could possibly convince them that everything in his presentation was true. He hadn't even gotten to tell them about rock climbing or cave exploration. Maybe it was better that Professor Gray had stopped him when they did. As the next student began their presentation about surviving in low-light conditions by evolving bioluminescence, Tom couldn't help but smile at the irony. He was probably the only student in class getting in trouble for telling the absolute truth. Tom sat in the Academy's administrative office, surrounded by holograms of Earth. The room was filled with alien officials who had come to investigate his suspicious homework assignment. Professor Gray stood nearby, their silver skin shifting with concerned patterns. "Young human," said the chief academic officer, a tall being made mostly of swirling gas, "we have reviewed your presentation materials. You claim these activities are normal." "Yes, sir," Tom replied, trying to stay patient. "I can show you more proof. We have thousands of videos of humans doing these things." A small robot floated forward, its sensors glowing blue. "We have accessed Earth's information networks," it announced in a chirping voice. "Initial data suggests the students' claims may be accurate." The room filled with surprised murmurs. Professor Gray's skin flickered rapidly. "But that's impossible," they said. "The activities described would be fatal to most known species." "Watch this," Tom said, pulling up a video on the main display. It showed a busy city park on a rainy day. Children splashed in puddles while adults jogged past with umbrellas. In the background, some teenagers were playing basketball on a wet court. The alien officials watched in stunned silence. The gaseous chief academic officer swirled so fast, they nearly dispersed. "This is real?" asked one of the junior administrators, their tentacles curling in disbelief. "Completely real," Tom confirmed. "And this is just normal stuff. Want to see what humans do for fun?" Before anyone could stop him, Tom brought up videos of extreme sports, skydiving, mountain climbing, surfing giant waves. With each new video, the aliens' reactions grew more dramatic. Pat, who had been allowed to attend as Tom's friend, had turned a previously unseen shade of shocked gray with sparkles. The robot assistant was processing data at high speed. Confirmed. Humans regularly engage in these activities. Their entertainment media contains even more extreme examples. They appear to seek out challenging conditions for enjoyment. Professor Gray had to sit down, their tall forms swaying slightly. "All this time, I thought you were making up stories. But you were actually downplaying things." Tom nodded. "I didn't want to scare anyone. I mean, I haven't even mentioned how we eat spicy food that would be toxic to most species, or how some humans run entire marathons in desert heat, or how we—" "Enough." The chief academic officer swirled dramatically. "We need time to process this information. This changes everything we thought we knew about Deathworld species." The robot assistant was still chirping out facts. Humans also deliberately expose themselves to additional gravity forces through exercise. They lift heavy objects repeatedly. They intentionally strain their muscles to become stronger. "What about the water activities?" interrupted one of the administrators. "You mentioned swimming." Tom grinned and pulled up a video of an Olympic swimming competition. The room erupted in chaos. Pat oozed under a chair in shock. Professor Gray's skin turned completely white. "You willingly immerse yourselves in liquid," the chief academic officer gasped. "For sport. We learned to swim as children," Tom explained. "Most of us think it's fun. We have whole parks filled with water for entertainment. We call them water parks." The robot assistant began displaying statistics about human aquatic activities. The number of swimming pools on Earth, the depth records for free diving, the existence of underwater hotels. Professor Gray finally found their voice again. "Tom, I owe you an apology. I assumed you were being dishonest, when in fact, you were simply describing your normal life. I never imagined." "It's okay," Tom said. "I understand it sounds crazy if you're not used to Earth conditions, but humans have adapted to handle all sorts of environments. We have to. Earth's weather and geography are always challenging us." The chief academic officer floated closer to Tom, their gaseous forms swirling thoughtfully. This revelation will need to be shared with the entire Academy. Perhaps with the entire Galactic Education Council. We have severely underestimated human capabilities. As the officials began discussing the implications of their discovery, Tom caught Pat changing to a color he'd never seen before, a sort of amazed, proud, scared mixture. "Tom," Pat said quietly, "are all humans like you?" "Pretty much," Tom replied. "We're just built to handle Earth. It's really not that impressive to us." The room full of aliens stared at him in disbelief. Clearly, they had a very different definition of impressive. The next few days at the Interstellar Academy were very different for Tom. Word had spread quickly about his homework presentation and the official verification of human capabilities. Now, instead of being treated with worried caution, he found himself the center of fascinated attention. His classmates couldn't stop asking questions. During lunch break, Tom sat at his usual table, surrounded by curious aliens. Kit hovered nearby, all 6 hands gesturing excitedly as they asked about Earth's seasons. "So you're saying the entire planet changes color depending on the time of year?" Kit's wings shimmered with interest. "And you just adapt to each change?" "Well, yeah," Tom said, showing them pictures on his tablet. "See, in autumn, the leaves turn orange and red before falling off the trees. In winter, everything gets covered in snow. Then in spring, it all turns green again." Pat, who had appointed themselves Tom's official fact-checker, was displaying a rainbow of amazed colors. "And humans just walk around in all these conditions, without protective shells or hibernation cycles. We wear different clothes depending on the weather," Tom explained. "But mostly we just get used to it. Earth's pretty unpredictable, so humans learn to handle whatever comes our way." Professor Gray's class had changed too. They had revised the entire curriculum to include accurate information about Earth and human capabilities. Today, they were discussing adaptation strategies, and Tom found himself being used as an example. "The human ability to thermoregulate," Professor Gray explained, their silver skin gleaming with excitement, "is far more advanced than we previously understood. They can function in temperatures ranging from what we would consider severely cold to dangerously hot, often within the same day." The professor pulled up a holographic display of human biological systems. "Note how their bodies automatically adjust to maintain stable internal conditions despite external changes. This is not through technology, but through natural biological processes." Alex raised one of their sensor stalks. "Is that why Tom doesn't need an environmental suit like the rest of us when the station's temperature fluctuates?" "Precisely," Professor Gray beamed. "In fact, the temperature range we consider extreme enough to require protective gear is well within human comfort zones." Tom felt a bit embarrassed by all the attention, but he had to admit it was better than being treated like he might accidentally break someone. He particularly enjoyed helping his friends understand Earth concepts they had trouble believing. During their study period, he showed them videos of human cities, trying to explain how buildings worked under Earth's gravity. The aliens were fascinated by skyscrapers, unable to comprehend structures that tall standing up to both gravity and wind. "But what if it rains?" one of the blob clusters asked, still nervous about the idea of water falling from the sky. "The buildings are designed to handle it," Tom explained. "We build everything on Earth knowing it has to deal with rain, snow, wind, and sometimes even earthquakes." "Earthquakes?" several voices asked at once. "Yeah, sometimes the ground shakes a bit. It's not a big deal most of the time. We have buildings designed to sway with the movement." Professor Gray, who had been listening nearby, made a sound that the translator couldn't quite handle. "You build flexible structures to withstand ground movement, under that gravity, and you consider this not a big deal." Tom shrugged. "You get used to it. Humans are pretty good at adapting." Later that day, the Academy's new system announced that they would be adding Earth studies to their regular curriculum. Tom was asked to help review the course materials to ensure they accurately represented human capabilities and living conditions. Just remember, Tom told the curriculum committee, try not to make it sound too dramatic. All this stuff is pretty normal for us. The committee members, representing 12 different species, stared at him in collective disbelief. The chief academic officer's gaseous form swirled with what might have been amusement. Mr. Smith, they said, I believe you'll find that your definition of normal is precisely what makes Earth studies so fascinating to the rest of the galaxy. Tom smiled, finally understanding that what was everyday life for him was practically a superhero story to everyone else. Maybe being a Deathworlder wasn't just about surviving tough conditions. It was about helping others understand that challenges could make you stronger. 1 month after the famous homework incident, Tom stood in the Academy's main hall, watching as workers installed a new display titled Life on Earth, a Deathworlder's perspective. His simple homework assignment had grown into something much bigger than he'd ever expected. The Academy had received thousands of applications from alien students wanting to learn more about Earth and humans. They'd even started planning an exchange program that would send alien students to Earth, though they were still working out the details of the environmental suits they'd need. Tom. Kit's familiar voice chimed as they fluttered down from above. Have you seen the new Earth Studies classroom? They've installed a gravity simulator so we can experience a fraction of Earth's pull. Just a fraction? Tom asked, grinning. Well, yes, Pat oozed up beside them, today showing excited swirls of bright orange. They tried setting it to full Earth gravity during testing, but the equipment couldn't handle it. 3 engineers fainted just watching the measurements. Professor Gray glided over, their silver skin gleaming with pride. Mr. Smith, your presence here has revolutionized our understanding of interspecies capabilities. The Galactic Education Council has officially recognized Earth as a training ground for environmental adaptation studies. Tom rubbed the back of his neck, still not used to all the attention. I just wrote about my normal life, he said. I never thought it would turn into such a big deal. That's exactly why it's important. Alex chimed in, their crystalline eyes reflecting the starlight from the station's windows. You showed us that what's impossible for one species might be everyday life for another. It's changed how we think about everything. The Academy had certainly changed. The corridors now featured screens showing Earth weather patterns and gravity maps. The library had a whole section dedicated to human activities and adaptations. Tom's classmates had even started a club called Understanding Deathworlders, where they studied different Earth environments. Oh, Kit suddenly remembered something, their wings flickering with excitement. Did you hear? The Academy is going to build an Earth simulation room, with real rain and everything. Though they'll watch that from behind safety glass, Pat added quickly, their color shifting to a slightly nervous yellow. Tom laughed. Maybe someday you'll try standing in the rain. It's actually pretty nice. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Professor Gray said, but their tone was amused. Though I must admit, watching humans casually walk through precipitation has become quite popular on the station's entertainment channels. Just then, the chief academic officer floated over, their gaseous forms swirling with purpose. Mr. Smith, we have a request. The next academic year begins soon, and we've received applications from 15 other human students. Would you help us develop an orientation program? Something to help both humans and aliens understand each other better. Tom thought about his first day at the Academy, how strange and overwhelming everything had seemed. I have some ideas, he said. Maybe we could start by explaining that what seems extreme to one species might be completely normal to another. Excellent point, the chief academic officer swirled approvingly. We should also warn the alien students that humans might accidentally show off their, what did you call it? Parkour. Yeah, maybe we should save that for advanced Earth studies, Tom grinned. As they discussed plans for the orientation program, Tom looked out the station's huge windows at Earth spinning below. He remembered how lonely he'd felt that first day, worried about fitting in at an alien school. Now, his homework mishap had turned into something amazing. A way for different species to learn from and understand each other. Tom, Pat interrupted his thoughts, their color a warm, friendly pink. Some of us are going to watch Earth nature documentaries in the common room. Want to join us and explain things? Sure, Tom smiled. But maybe we should skip the volcano episodes for now. There are fire mountains on Earth. Kit's wings buzzed with shock. See. Professor Gray's skin rippled with laughter. You're still surprising us, Mr. Smith. As Tom walked away with his friends, he could hear the chief academic officer explaining the new Earth Studies program to some visitors. Yes, it all started with a simple homework assignment. They were saying, who would have thought that a Deathworlder's normal day could teach us so much? Tom smiled. His little homework adventure had done more than just clear up some misunderstandings. It had opened up a whole new way for humans and aliens to learn from each other. And this was just the beginning.